college football playoff expansion. Is it coming, yes or no? And if so, what is the best format? A few weeks ago, Brett McMurphy of Stadium put out a survey to 112 athletic directors for Division I football teams. And the first poll, or the first result that he wrote about, at least I should say, was how would a college football season look? Obviously, the coronavirus pandemic is taking the entire world by storm. Right now, no sports can resume. And while the season starts in late August, early September, the question begs, well, what's going to happen? Will we be allowed to play football? If so, will fans be allowed to attend? And he basically asked ADs, at least right now, it was early April, what are your thoughts? What would the season look like? And if we can start on time, what are some ideas and what are some ways that college football can play their season without basically losing all the revenue? That's the biggest thing. Football revenue for most of these schools, even if they're basketball schools, the revenue that comes in for a football season is so large that most of these, or some of these schools, I should say, fund themselves because football brings in so much money. They can help support the other 25, 30, 32 Olympic sports that these schools have. It's important for college football to be played. And at least for the most part, the consensus was one way or another, a college football season will be played. Whether it was that fully in the spring, whether that was playing a condensed 9 or 10 game schedule, whether that was starting the season 2 weeks later, or 2 months later, I should say. So started October, ended in March, let's say, where you have March Madness basketball and football. There's ideas of playing the College Football Playoff National Championship on Memorial Day weekend. So there's all different ideas and theories that, well, we need to play somehow. And we believe, at least in the calendar academic year, starting in September of 2020, ending in May of 2021, sometime in that area, we will play college football. So now, that survey continued about college football playoff expansion. And so of those 112 athletic directors that were polled, 88% of 112 athletic directors say they want college football playoff expansion. Now, if that's going to be the case, what is it going to look like? 72% wanted an 8-team playoff, 11 wanted either 12 or 16 teams, and 5% wanted 6 teams. So again, college football playoff is going to come, or college football playoff expansion, I should say, is coming. The deal ends after the 2025 season, so we're about halfway through. We have 6 years left of a 12-year deal that ESPN signed to broadcast and put on this 4-team college football playoff. So change is coming. The question is, what is the best option then for change? Right? There's so many different ideas. People want 6 teams. People want 8 teams, 12 teams. You hear Jim Harbaugh, is one of the college coaches that really pushes for 16 teams. To me, the best option, and it should go no further than this, 8 teams. Expand it to 8, double the field, but do not expand anymore. 16 to me is too much. Same thing with 12. 6 is not enough. It still does very little to help a lot of these teams and kind of, or at least return the balance, I should say, to college football. So with 8 teams, how I would do it is Power 5 conference champions. So all 5 of those conference champions will get in automatically. 2 wild cards. So the teams that are ranked theoretically 6th and 7th in the rankings, in the final rankings. And a group of 5 team, the highest ranked group of 5 team, but with a caveat. The group of 5 team has to be ranked in the top 25. If not, they'll take the next 3 highest ranked teams. So you do the Power 5 conference champions and the next 3 highest ranked teams. I want to include, and it should be fair, I think that group of 5 deserves a representation, but at the same time, they have to earn it. If they're not in the top 25, if you have a team, let's say like UCF, who is the highest ranked, let's say, champion or team in the group of 5, but they're not ranked, or maybe they're, if they're not ranked, guess what? Sorry, you're out. The group of 5 is out this year. You got to earn it. Next 3 highest ranked teams, teams 6, 7, and 8 in the rankings, come on down. At least for me, this allows 3 different or at least opens up 3 different avenues that makes college football even better than it is right now. One, if you expand it to 8 teams, it allows for competitive scheduling. If you're a college football fan, I hate it. I'm sure you hate it. These cupcake games that continue to get played for the first few weeks of the season is mind-numbing, it's boring, and it stinks. Now, 1 or 2 I can understand, right? You understand if, let's say, LSU this year, for example, they played at Texas. I can understand, and I'll give them a break if they want to schedule Georgia Southern or Little Sisters of the Poor for a game. Because if you're going to challenge yourself, fine. I have no problem playing cupcake games. The university of my alma mater, I went to, Penn State, they're starting to challenge themselves in the future. But at least when I was there and recently since I graduated, they are played, for the most part, pretty soft non-conference games. The biggest game, let's say, was probably Pitt, and it's Pitt. I understand it's an in-state rivalry, but Pitt's not good. They have, whether it's they played Appalachian State or Kent State. Like, these games are boring. I'm sorry. One or two, you understand. But if now at least there's you play a big game, right? They're playing Auburn in a few years. You have some of these this year specifically. You have Ohio State going to Oregon. That's a great game. You have Texas going to LSU. That's a great game. So now at least expanding the college football playoff to 8 teams, you're allowing for competitive scheduling to happen because now one loss essentially doesn't ruin your season or you don't need help to get into the playoff. Right? We saw if you have one loss, for the most part, you really can't control your destiny. Alabama lost to LSU this year. Obviously, Tua got hurt. But if he did not get hurt, they would still need help and need another team to lose if they were getting to the college football playoff. If 4 teams were undefeated, Alabama, no matter how impressive their resume, no matter if Tua was healthy, no matter how bad they beat everyone else on their schedule, the 4 undefeated teams are getting in. So you need help. So now at least you can schedule harder because you realize one game, one loss doesn't ruin your season and you're still in control of your season and still in control of making the playoff or not. So now you can have better, improved games. You can have a Notre Dame play Georgia again. You can have an Ohio State take on Oregon or USC or Texas. You can have these big-time schools that rarely play each other during the regular season. They could schedule games out, and they have been, maybe in anticipation of an expansion coming. But now you see 2026, 2027, you have Clemson and Georgia. You have Alabama, Notre Dame. You have a lot of great matchups, prime time, big-time matchups happening more and more often. Part of that is because, again, they know one loss doesn't ruin your season. So now at least you can get rid of maybe a cupcake game or two and put in a real opponent that would be better for college football and be better for the fans to watch, especially early in the season. Because I'll say this, being a huge college football fan myself, honestly, my favorite part of the entire season and schedule are these non-conference games. Conference games are great. Penn State, Ohio State, Alabama, LSU, Auburn, Alabama, the Iron Bowl, Ohio State, Michigan. You have a lot of great rivalry games and a lot of great games throughout each conference schedule, right? Texas, Oklahoma. But I almost get more excited for these games you don't see too often. Georgia, Notre Dame, I was more excited for than a normal regular season game. And again, you had LSU, Texas earlier this year. You have Oregon, Ohio State this year. You have some great games on the schedule against teams that don't normally play each other. I get more jacked for that. I get more excited for that. So hopefully that will, going to 8 will allow for these games to happen more often. Because one loss does not end your schedule, or end your season, I should say, and you're still in control of making the playoff. And not to mention, so obviously I would say it helps the non-conference scheduling part at the beginning of the season. Well, also going to 8, it helps create more meaningful games at the end of the season. Right now, conference championships will gain a lot more weight than they did. This past year, you had Ohio State, LSU, and Clemson all playing their conference games. I think it's fair to say any three of those teams could have lost and they still would have made the playoff. Ohio State was comfortably in, LSU was comfortably in, and Clemson was comfortably in. So despite having still a conference game that still matters, it really didn't mean that much. If Wisconsin won the Big Ten, if Georgia won the SEC, all that really does is help Georgia get in the playoff. LSU, even if they lose, they're still getting in the playoff. So now as you create more meaningful games with a conference championship game actually meaning something and being basically a legitimate play-in game. But not just that, too. You have games towards the end of the season that really mean a lot for the college football playoff race. Obviously, it's just pure math. If you have a team that's ranked number 6, they're playing a team that's maybe 8th, 9th, 10th, 12th, but the winner goes to the conference championship game, or more importantly, just the winner just moves on in terms of number 6 team keeping their playoff alive. Those games are more important. The Iron Bowl, Auburn, Alabama was a great game, right? Very exciting. To be honest, it didn't really mean much. I don't think Alabama was getting the playoff if they won that game anyway. You lose a little juice. Alabama now, if it was 8, that game would have meant more. So now at least you create it to where later in the season, you have more games mean something that all of a sudden now are bigger games. So you have conference championship games, again, meaning something for the most part, having more importance. You have games towards the end of the regular season in November that are very, very important. And you have even rivalry games to where, you had Ohio State, Michigan. Michigan was not getting the playoff this year. But Michigan knew, okay, well, we can have a chance to help at least ding Ohio State's chance to get into the playoff. It just creates more meaningful games in November, which For a college football fan, the season's already short enough. To have even more important games would be huge. So it adds importance to the game this season by allowing teams to schedule harder, schedule more non-conference games against some big-time opponents, and it creates for more meaningful games towards the end of the season. And more importantly, you look at the numbers and the percentages of teams that make the playoff, it allows for a fairer system, allows for more teams to have a chance, which really, you look at every other sports league, college football is the only one that tries their hardest to not allow teams in. Think about it. Right now, you have 5 Power 5 conference, or you have Power 5 conferences, right? You have the SEC, you have the ACC, you have the Big 12, the Big 10, and the Pac-12. Right now, no matter what happens, no matter how great the conference is, no matter how great one team is, one of those teams are getting left out automatically. Theoretically, all 5 of those teams, all 5 conference winners could go 13-0, win their conference, and guess what? One of them is being left out automatically just because the system we have in place doesn't allow for inclusion equally for every conference. So if you have, let's say, Oregon go 13-0, but you have the Big 10, the Big 12, the SEC, and the ACC champion also go 13-0, and they're ranked 1, 2, 3, 4, and you have Oregon at number 5, guess what? Oregon's out. They didn't do anything wrong. They took care of business. They beat every team they're supposed to. But because just right away, in no other sport is this a scenario, you could win every single game and miss the playoffs. That is an inherent flaw of the college football playoff. So at least now we have 8 teams. Every Power 5 team is represented. The group of 5, assuming they're ranked, is represented. And not to mention, too, it's still hard to make the playoff. If you just look at pure percentages of the amount of teams in the league compared to the amount of teams that make the playoff, college football, if they expand to 8, will still be the lowest percentage of teams that make the playoff by far. Just 6.1% of FBS Division I teams will make the playoff if it goes 8. You know what the percentages are for the other professional leagues and even for March Madness? So for the NBA, 53% of their teams make the playoffs. NHL, 51%. So 2 leagues in the NHL and the NBA, you have more teams make the playoffs than miss the playoffs. NFL, 43.7%. And March Madness even, just under 20% of teams that play college basketball make March Madness. And here's college football. If they go to 8, if they double their playoff, it's still sitting at just 6.1% of teams. So it's still hard to make the playoff. You're not allowing bad teams in. Because at least to me, if you expand to 8, the gap between 8 and 9 is wider between the talent level than it would be between teams 4 and 5. I think it's fair to say the team that's ranked number 5 right now has a better chance to win a national title than the team that's ranked number 9. So you're still allowing for inclusion of teams that deserve to be in the playoff that have a chance to win. For the most part, unless it's a bad year for the group of 5, or you have a great year, let's say for like LSU. Really this year, if you had LSU, Ohio State, or Clemson, any one of those 3 teams get the top seed and play a group of 5 team, it would be a slaughter. Other than that, I would say there would be some really competitive playoff games. So you're allowing for a chance to have some great football, some more important football, some great non-conference games to be scheduled, all by doubling your playoff format to 8. I would stop it right there, though. I don't think 12 or 16 is the answer. I think 6 is too little. So college football playoff expansion is coming. Like I said, Stadium did this poll, 112 athletic directors, 88% of them said they want an expanded playoff. So when the deal ends after the 2025 season, that current deal, at least that has, that ESPN signed to have a 4-team college football playoff, once that ends, expansion is coming. 72% of ADs said they want an 8-team playoff. I agree with them. To me, 8 teams is the best option. Power 5 conference champions, 2 wild cards, and a group of 5 team, assuming that group of 5 team is ranked. If not, the next 3 highest teams ranked 7, 6, 7, 8, 9. Or 5, 6, 7, 8. I can't do any math. Holy cow. There is a chance that everyone is included fairly. It gives teams a legitimate chance to make the playoff. And again, to me, it only boosts and enhances the regular season, which has been the main argument against expansion of college football. That is, anyone who is against the expansion always argues the fact that it waters down the regular season. I don't see how it does that. To me, it only enhances it. You play better non-conference games that are scheduled. You have more games have a bigger impact for the playoff at the end of the season. So if anything, these games only get more important and they get better. What's so bad about that?